Dean. Nice to
Hey
see you.
Nino, thanks so much for joining me. It's about time that I got to see your thinner, more rejuvenated looking
Mhm.
appearance.
Uh-huh.
It's been some time since I've seen you anyway, so I'm thrilled to kind of catch up a little bit and hear what's been going on. Uh,
Yeah,
I want
absolutely.
to hear about your journey as well, getting started and see what we can contribute to people who are looking in the direction of simpler health because you jumped in and you've been coached over the past little while
Yeah.
by our head coach, Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, that's right, Dean. Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to get a chance to catch up with you. Last time I saw you was a few years ago now. I think it was before COVID, and we are having a chat. And I think I was kind of curious about, your journey and what you were getting into. And I believe it was probably, how long has Simpler Health been operating?
The brand itself, I invented at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah.
but the kind of work that we've been doing, geez, since 2014.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember talking to you about it and thinking, okay, that's interesting. And sort of just kind of parked that. I was kind of interested in other things at the time. And but gradually having, following you on Facebook as, connected as we are on Facebook and other social media and just seeing what you're up to and what you do and the results and I guess just having an interest in my own health and sort of experimenting with different things over time and getting some results and then that kind of yo-yo, which I think a lot of people would be familiar with, that you kind of lose weight for a bit, feel good, and then suddenly before you know it, you're sort of back to where you were and wondering why exactly, when, what happened, what went wrong, and so on. And I guess sort of just getting a kind of a rudimentary understanding of what you were doing in Simpler Health and really dealing with metabolic health and the underlying causes of weight gain and so on. I thought, okay, I really want to kind of dive into this with people who know what they're doing and have an evidence base. And so knowing the results you were getting, I kind of reached out and Trevor came on board, and I've been with Trevor for 6 weeks now. And I'm about 10 kilos down, feeling
Wow.
fantastic. Still, on that journey, on phase one of the journey as we go. But yeah, doing great and just and really feeling like I'm just learning along the way and investing. Actually, that's probably the word that comes to mind. Investing in my future. It's not a short-term thing that I was after. I think most people kind of know short-term what they can do to lose a bit of weight, but that's not what it's about. It's that longer game. It's that longevity game. It's about resetting the metabolism or understanding a metabolism, whatever. So yeah, it's been really interesting journey, mate. So kudos to you and the team.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's just so perfect that you use the word investing, and it is an investment. And I've been thinking about this of late because people keep asking, what the heck is the secret? Everyone's looking for the secret or
Yeah.
the one thing that they're not doing, and it really is that. It's just wherever you're not succeeding at something, you're just not investing enough.
Mhm.
And we all talk about the two most important areas of our life, health and relationships. But if I'm a fly on the wall watching people, how they behave in their life, maybe their behaviors would suggest that they're committed to something other than health and relationships. So you, just like you've got to invest to become wealthy, your finances, you got to invest your time, your energy, your resources in being well as well. Health just doesn't come about on its own just because you've read a book. You've got to do it, or you've watched a YouTube clip, or you've spoken to someone. No, you actually have to invest your resources, your time, your energy, your commitment, your focus in what it takes to get well. And when that commitment is there, then we're available to help guide people through that process, just like you. So in the
Mhm.
past 6 weeks, tell me, I'm interested to know because you went on some kind of journey prior or many iterations of trying to restore health and learn. What is it that's been strikingly distinct about the past 6 weeks compared to anything else that you've tried before?
Look, I think probably it's no, it's not as much of an effort as I thought it would be. Number one. So, I've experimented with kind of diets before, kind of low carb, kind of keto. Um, but without, because I hadn't been supplementing adequately, right? Not knowing, basically just doing that, but without sort of taking care of the other things that you guys put your people on. I've then sort of suffered either dips in energy, up and down, some headaches or tiredness, constipation, other side effects, basically, because I wasn't doing the protocol correctly, right? I was kind of just cherry picking, like you say. You look at something on the internet and you look into it, and you do your research, and you think that you know what you're doing, but you sort of, something falls short. So I think one of the characteristics this time around is I don't feel hungry,
Mm.
and my energy levels are great. So I feel alert and I feel energetic. That's probably the biggest difference. And the other one as well, which was a real surprise to me, was that I haven't had to like do heaps of exercise and work out and that whole calorie deficit thing and burn all this. So it's actually been pretty kind of cruisy as well. Like I'm still active. I make sure that I'm active. I might get to the gym a couple of times a week, do some very light kind of weights, nothing full on. Still enough to keep it challenging, but nothing full on. And I'm just losing the weight and I'm feeling good, the energy. And you know what? It's a general, one of the other things that I probably had as well was this sensation of sometimes that inflammation, around my joints and so on, that I used to have before. And I feel, well, I don't have that. That's another thing, that it feels like if there's a tangible expression of a reduction in inflammation in the body, then I kind of feel that that's where I'm at. I don't feel that inflammation, if you know what I mean.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Happens fast, hey?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does really. I mean, after that week one, from week two onwards, it's amazing. I mean, even that first week, it's mind blowing the results that you get straight up. It's like, what the hell? That's like crazy. It was like how much? It was, I think the first week was something like 3 or 4 kilos or something. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yes.
It was ridiculous how much that first week. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's good. Well, I mean, one of the important commitments that we have with all our clients is that you have a sourceful relationship to the science, and what's happening in your body as you go through the process. So, that initial week, it's really absolutely critical, and the significant drop in total body weight, a good amount of that is water
Yeah.
mass. So, you're starving we put people into a ketogenic situation. So, and if it's not keto, it's not keto. So all these people who are like going low carb thinking that it's keto, unless you're in ketosis, it's not keto.
Yeah.
So how do you know you're in ketosis? Well, you're losing weight. And people can urinate on these keto strips, for example, and it turns purple, and they'll go, well, it's it's measuring the ketone bodies. So you've got 3 kinds of ketone bodies. Acetone you can smell on your breath, and also beta hydroxybutyrate you can measure in your blood, and then there's acetoacetate, which you can measure in your urine, gets excreted, and that's what gets measured on those urine strips. However, the whole intention of the way that this is designed is for your body to adapt to running on ketones. So as your body becomes more efficient at utilizing ketones as a fuel, you're not going to excrete as many ketones. So you'll notice if there was at all some acetone on your breath, that's gone after a couple of weeks. And similarly, you won't be excreting the acetoacetate in your urine. So people are like, oh my God, I'm out of ketosis. It's like, no, you're still in ketosis. How do I know? Your weight's going down and your muscle mass is remaining the same.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
that's the clearest indication that you're in ketosis, and all it means is you're burning your own body fat, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if I can speak to just a few of those phenomena that you said, one of the two main reasons people struggle on diets is because they get hungry and their energy levels are impacted. Right. Now, the energy level one is it's interesting because people are tired anyway, right? When they come in because they want more energy, and then they've tried diets in the past and they restrict themselves, they starve themselves, right? Alluding to. So there's the macronutrient composition, protein, carbs, and fats. And then there's all the micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, all of that stuff. And you need to be smart with all of it. And so you have been able to manage your energy levels, because even though we're restricting your total caloric intake, we've done it in a way where your body is now preferentially utilizing its own fat as a fuel source. So there's no drop in total calories available to your working cells and tissues.
Yeah,
which is
amazing.
pretty cool. Yeah. And then the hunger aspect, once you go into ketosis, there's a few things that manage your hunger. One is you're in a coaching structure, so you're less likely to deviate. And Trevor is like brilliant. He's just militant. And it's like, where's your food diary? How do I know what you're doing on the court? Send me your food diary, right? Yeah. So you're way less likely to deviate. But more than anything, the ketones themselves are appetite suppressant. So you just don't get hungry. Plus, you're eating protein throughout the day. And the protein of the three macronutrients, protein is the most satiating. So, and you're eating it throughout the day, and it's very high biological value protein that you're consuming. And we've assisted by making certain products available, ease of use, etc., that you can get through us. And then also you're stretching your gut a couple of times a day with the vegetables and salad at lunch and at dinner. And that lets your central nervous system through your gut, so the mechanical receptors in your gut and the hormones that get secreted communicate to your brain that, hey, there's a plentiful amount of food, don't stress.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing how satiating it can be. And you're right, that protein at regular intervals makes such a difference. And it tastes damn good, man. Flavors are great, so you feel like you're having a treat as well. So it ticks all those boxes. But yeah, look, that was really interesting, and you're quite right. Rather than sort of starving yourself and feeling like it's this kind of punishment that you're going through, it's just a really easy. I mean, there's still challenges that you have to overcome, like the talk and so on. But it's amazing how little we need to feel satiated, really. You look at that plate of veggies and the salad, and like it's a big plate of veggies, really, and it is completely satiating. Like it's so good.
Yes.
So good. Yeah.
Now, this is distinct from other sort of ketogenic dietary approaches where there's a big emphasis on ensuring 70-80% of your total caloric intake comes from fat. Now that becomes an issue, because if you're consuming a lot of fat, it then makes it difficult to create a sufficient calorie deficit for you to burn your own fat. You don't need to consume more fat. You've got enough fat that you want to churn through first. Later, we'll transition you and we'll increase the fat intake. But right now, let's churn through your own fat. And something that a lot of people don't understand is that when you lose your own fat, it's not just that you're burning your fat for fuel. And it's the only way you can lose the weight is you got to burn that fat off, right? And that fat gets converted to carbon dioxide and water, and 16% water, 84% on average carbon dioxide. The water, some of it you'll resorb, some of it you'll pee out, some of it you sweat out if working out a little bit. If you're being coached by Trevor or me, maybe some tears. And
Not yet.
84%, not yet.
There's
84%.
of laughter occasionally, but
Yeah, he's great. I mean, you gotta laugh at it all and keep a sense of humor. But 84% gets breathed out in the form of carbon dioxide.
yeah, right.
So that's where your fat goes.
Yeah,
Right.
mate.
So, after 6 weeks, you're close to being fully ketone adapted.
Mhm.
And you really ought to be out walking and with the energy levels that you're experiencing, in the initial part, you don't have to do anything. Just sit on the couch and we turn your body into a fat burning machine.
Yeah.
But then you're like, man, I feel better. I want to,
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And that's, often have that conversation with Trevor, like, the gym. And he's like, nah, hold back. Dean used to say this to me as well. I used to go, what do you mean I can't work out? Well, it's like, just chill. And, look, the other thing as well. And, I know this is all part of being coachable. You got to kind of trust the process. And the times when I've kind of gone, okay, so this week I will hold back, I won't go heavy at the gym, because, starting to sort of understand the mechanisms at work. And if I am pushing those muscles, what is that signaling to the body, and what is that going to start, converting in the muscle, and or so okay, I get why you're saying go easy, take it easy. And I did that last week, and got a much better result just from doing less.
yes,
I
amazing.
burnt more fat from doing less. Whereas the week before I was like, I think I need to burn more fat, so I'll go a bit harder at the gym. Nah, didn't work. The
Yes.
reverse happened.
If only everyone knew this.
It's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I can imagine you've been very disciplined with your, eating true to the design of the protocol, et cetera, and doing what your coach says. But for a lot of people who are trying to go it themselves, they'll go to the gym and they'll flog themselves. There's a few things that happen. One is people have this addiction to hard work. So they'll go in and work themselves and they'll exercise to failure. The problem with that is it jacks cortisol levels right up. And that's inhibitory to the fat loss. Okay. The other thing is if you overwork your muscles, you cause a lot of reactive oxygen species and an inflammatory response. And again, inflammation is inhibitory to weight loss. So the secret to all of this is we're minimizing insulin output and inflammation.
Right.
And that's what allows your body to adapt and reprogram so efficiently. And then also for those who don't understand how to design the appropriate diet for fat loss, is they'll go and work out in the gym. They're not yet ketone adapted, so their body's not yet proficient in burning fat, and they'll exhaust their whatever's remaining of their muscle glycogen stores in the gym. Then their brain kicks into gear, because again, their body's not used to just switching over and burning fat. Their brain will kick in and go, come on, idiot, what are you doing? Eat some carbs.
Right.
And it becomes more difficult and challenging for them to maintain a restricted dietary approach.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to binge. And there are some studies actually more recently showing that people who have trying to lose weight and they have a structured exercise regime throughout the week are more likely to overeat. So it's and they're more likely to see the exercise as being able to burn off those little indiscretions, those little treats every day that over time just add up.
Yeah, I see myself in that. Yeah, absolutely. I see myself in that, because the last time I was at a, decent weight, going world training, I thought the key was all in the training. So I'd up the training. But with the training that I was upping my appetite, more food. And because I was going to the gym more regularly, I was going, oh, I can have that little treat. I can have that. Exactly what you were describing. Just allow myself that little bit more. I'll just work harder in the gym tomorrow. This idea that I can just burn it off in the gym, and just going, why am I feeling heavier? Why am I putting on weight? Like I'm going to go harder at the gym. And it was just a cycle.
Yeah.
That I knew how to break. So really interesting to hear you say that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm, learning that as I go along, but just you reiterating that is like, that's why I came to you guys.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago the term being coachable.
Yeah.
Tell us what that means, because you're I know you from my memory of you. You're a very coachable guy. So I think this could be a really sourceful opportunity to share with people what that means for you.
Yeah.
Therefore, what there is for people to take on when they jump into any kind of situation or structure that involves a coach and being coached.
Yeah, look, I think at any time when we come to a point where we want to learn something, or where we determine that we want to affect some kind of change, you know, we're open to it. And if we're open to it, then we need to sort of embrace the opportunity to learn and to go on that journey with someone. Now, the coachability thing comes from, I mean, you and I share a background in certain coaching methodologies and so on. I've also got a master's in coaching psychology, and I work as a coach. That's my profession. And so, you know, being coachable is a kind of prerequisite of these kind of, you know, relationships if you want to learn something. And I think any pursuit that involves learning or mastery means that we've got to be open, and we've got to be open to, you know, it doesn't mean we have to be perfect, right? Because we're going to, you know, stuff up from time to time. You know, we're going to, but it's about observing, being mindful of our behaviors, mindful of our thinking and what trips us up in the service of something bigger. It's always in the service of something bigger. And so for me to embark on a relationship with a coach to learn something and then undermine myself, sabotage myself by not being coachable, for me, defeats the purpose. Why would I do that? Why am I there? I'm here to learn something. I'm saying, I now want to go on a journey with you as my coach. I want to learn from you. And there's feedback that happens. I get feedback from my coach, but I'm also developing my own feedback. I'm learning. I'm gaining. I'm in the pursuit of my own mastery of myself, my thoughts and feelings, my behaviors, and so on. And so the only way I can learn is by being coachable. You know, I don't see being half-hearted about any of this isn't going to serve me. You know, so it's not about, you know, doing it for the sake of the coach. It's, you know, this is the relationship, you know, this is the commitment, you know. So without that commitment, it's not going to work.
Mm.
So I don't know if that if that's kind of, you know, explains it, or if you want to add something to that, Dean. But that's essentially it.
Listen, nothing other than it's a very obviously humble approach that you take, given that you have an extensive background and experience in the coaching world, and you have a master's in coaching psychology, and that you still allow yourself to be so coachable and be coached.
Oh, absolutely. We're always learning, you know.
Yeah, that's so great. That's so, you know, I remember that there's so much pressure. The whole coaching industry has just taken off, and
Yeah.
you know, there's so many people out there. Some, you know, some are pretty great, and a whole bunch of others are pretty mediocre. And there's this whole industry in business, right? Now, and there's this pressure that people place on themselves to be perfect. You know, I can't be the coach I want to be unless I myself are perfect. And they're so harsh on themselves. And I love it. I remember seeing some video footage of Usain Bolt at training.
Yeah.
And he's on the track, and his father, I mean, this is how hard Usain Bolt used to train. And you know, his father couldn't even watch him train. He came once to a training session and watched his son work himself so hard that he was throwing up on the track, and his dad just couldn't handle it. So he's like, you know what, I'm just going to come to the races, not the training anymore. But the coach, Usain Bolt's coach, was sitting in an armchair, like in a fold-up chair by the side of the track, overweight, fat, just sitting there, just instructing him.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So share with me, like, to give people an actionable access, what makes a great coach and what makes a great coachee?
Well, I think so. It's a relationship. It's a partnership. it's entering into a coaching space, and it's what fills the space that matters, right? It's not about the ego, it's about what content. So the first, there's context and there's content, right? So the context is we're here to learn together. We're embarking on a journey together. It's a co-creation.
Mm.
So each person brings something of themselves into it. They bring their knowledge, they bring their experience, but they're also bringing empathy and understanding of what it is to be human. And so, a coach that has empathy, that understands, but can be very straight because they're in service of that person, right? So, empathy comes from the realization that another person suffers as you suffer, and that opens to compassion. And so what it means is that you can be very strict with someone, very straight with someone, but the context of compassion is always there, which means that if I'm going to be straight with you, strict with you, and so on, it's because I care. I care about the result, and I take your commitment seriously. So if you as coachee come to me and say, I want to do this, this is what I'm out to achieve, then it would be derelict of my duty to kind of just butter you up, flatter you, deceive you, or whatever, right? Because to make me look good, but it's not in service of what you actually want. So if I need to be straight with you, I'm going to be straight with you because that's what you want, right? I want you to achieve. And, what the coachee needs to do is what the coachee does in a good relationship with a good coach is they lean into that trust, they reciprocate that trust by, being true to their word. And when they falter, because, no one's perfect. And if they falter, when they falter, okay, use that as a learning opportunity. I messed up, I stuffed up, or I'm thinking this, or I'm feeling that, or I've got this doubt, or I've got this concern, or whatever it is. But you bring it to the space so that it can be dealt with, it can be resolved. So it's creating this safe kind of space between coach and coachee in which we can fill that space with our knowledge, with our expertise, with our experience. We can draw from that well. I think the coach is really there to sort of provide insight, to challenge where necessary, and to provide perspective. Because, sometimes as coachee, you're going about affecting change, and different behavioral change and so on. But sometimes, it takes a little while for that perspective to shift. Or perhaps there's little blind spots that you're not seeing that the coach is able to see because they're coming from a different perspective. So being able to, be open to learn and allowing the coach to do what a coach does and listen for the new perspective, because I think that's where the real learning comes. You start looking at things from a different angle, from a different perspective, and that's where growth really comes. And the other thing that I would say is that sometimes there's discomfort, but any growth, any change entails some level of discomfort, whether it's physical or psychological, because that's the essence of growth. We know that. It doesn't mean that has to be painful or bad, but it might be uncomfortable sometimes. But leaning to that discomfort, there's growth on the other end. So that's exciting as well.
Yeah. Wow. And do you work one-on-one, or do you do corporate? Do you have corporate clientele?
Bit of everything, Dean. I work primarily one-on-one. I have a lot of one-on-one clients, but I also run seminars on various topics. So that might be 20, 30 people. And occasionally I'll do team coaching, but that was more pre-COVID. After that, a lot of that corporate team coaching sort of dried up a little bit. So primarily one-on-one. I work one-on-one, but I like one-on-one. I like being able to sort of, really sort of get in there with someone. There's so many layers, and like you, I'm really interested in the human experience, what makes us human. There's so many things to uncover, and as a coach as well, right? It's so gratifying because you're learning all the time. Every conversation brings something new.
Yes.
And allows you to bring out your knowledge and so on. But there's another, you're getting feedback as well from the coachee and what they're experiencing, and it might provide you a different perspective on how to frame something, or how to look at something, or how to think about something, or how to communicate something. So it's great for both parties, I reckon. That's why it's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And um, I know for myself, from a head injury that I experienced almost 2.5 years ago, something like that, and the impact on my cognitive prowess and was the impact was enormous, and for me, because I really love making myself available for people, and I do that by listening, as you said, with a degree of compassion, but like ruthless compassion.
Yeah, yeah.
And especially in these kind of structures, more than anything, what seems to work is tough love,
Yeah,
emphasis on love, right? As
yeah.
you pointed out earlier. But when I wasn't so present, and my energy, my reserves were low. And by the way, during that initial period, it was about 5.5 months. Like I was almost out completely. I could hardly do anything. That's when
Wow.
Trevor's development really took off, because he had to take the load
Yeah,
off
right.
my shoulders, and my workload, I had to drop it to about a third.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really difficult because energetically I just wasn't available. I couldn't recreate people.
Mm.
I couldn't listen. I wasn't out here. I was just so tired,
Yeah.
and listening to people was exhausting, and that was unbelievably upsetting for me.
Yeah.
And people experience that all the time,
Mm.
and that brain fog and the inability to connect with people, and they withdraw their participation from their life. And the when the brain fog lifts inside of a coaching structure at Simpler Health, when people start restoring their health and vitality, the inflammation reduces. We hear this a lot. People say, I just feel like me again,
Mm.
or I just feel like this is who I've wanted to be. And
Mm.
they report things back to us like improvements in their just general satisfaction at work, their ability to communicate, their happiness in their relationships. There's especially intimate relationships. There's a whole bunch of other things that restore as well. And,
Yeah.
you know, so people enjoy that part, and that stuff's important. Um,
Yeah.
have you noticed for yourself any improvements in your ability to connect and be present with people, because you're at there's a higher demand for you to be present, given that you're a coach? Have you noticed that any improvements in your cognitive presence over the past 6 weeks?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I have. I think I would say in terms of mental stamina, so the ability to focus for longer periods. I feel like I've got more energy going into the evening and the night, whereas, after a day, particularly, if a day of coaching, and so you're talking a lot and so on, sometimes by the time evening comes, I like to write, and that's what I do, a lot of my creative stuff at night. And sometimes I feel so kind of, like brain dead, like just so flat and jaded, tired, whereas I don't have that now. I kind of feel alert, whether it's 6 a.m. or 11 p.m. I still feel like alert, not awake, like I'll sleep well, but I feel certainly more mentally alert. And I think, yeah, presence, absolutely. You know what? Because I think it's that reduction in the stress, the cortisol, the inflammation. Things I don't get down about stuff as much, or distracted as much. I can just be more present, a little more calm. Not that I'm not the Dalai Lama, but I'm kind of, certainly I've noticed the difference. And, and that, the other thing as well, being present. So more present to myself as well, right? So more, I can notice in myself what's going on. If I'm getting a little dip in energy, sometimes, again, going back to that whole balance, and talking to Trevor about this, the electrolytes that you've got to kind of manage along the way, right? So every now and then I feel a little bit tired, or a little bit something, I'll just up the potassium or the salt, whatever, and have some in my water, and that sort of just gets that electrolyte balance going again. And and all of a sudden, I'm fine, I'm clear. Occasionally, if it comes the afternoon, I feel like a little, little shut eye, little siesta. I'll have like a 20-minute lie down, and then I'm flying for the rest of the afternoon. So even that, rather, whereas before the old way would have been like, oh, I'll have another coffee, or I'll do this, or I'll, whatever, it's like, I'll power through, or whatever it is that you do. I have have a sugar hit or whatever, right? Whereas now it's just a very different, so even presence of self has increased. So mental clarity, yep, alertness, endurance, stamina. Yeah, man, tick, tick, tick. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. And how much further have you got to go in phase one?
Look, I reckon I've got. I reckon I'm probably. I'd like to think that I'm past the halfway mark of phase one, but round about there. I like. There's some more goals with regard to body fat, reducing body fat. So where my weight is pretty good. Like historically, it's at a pretty good rate, and I feel good. But definitely want to drop more body fat. And just in terms of my BMI, the visceral fat, I want to get that down a fair bit more. So I reckon probably I don't know, could be 4 weeks, could be 6 weeks, depending on how we go, whatever it is. Initially when I started, I thought, hopefully by New Year's, I'll be able, phase one and blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't really sure what to expect, to be honest. Whereas now it's like, okay, it might be, end of January, it might be into February, whatever it is, I'm committed to it. So that's it.
Yeah, yeah. We get a number of people who they and ah on their way in, and
Yeah.
they've got an idea of the results they want and by when, and it's got to happen this way, and it can't be too uncomfortable, and don't yell at me, and they come with all of their rules, okay?
Yeah, right.
And and they forget that this is like you're transforming for the rest of your life. It's
Yeah.
not just a quick fix, like I need to fit into this dress by this date or these pants by this date, or and then I'm going to go ruin it over Christmas, and then I'll come back again. And and I've had people I've had to have some pretty serious, straightforward conversations with, where I've said, sorry, you don't get to put me on pause like that.
Yeah.
And if you do choose to quit, because you're not completing the journey is complete when I say, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is to honor a coaching structure and a relationship. And if you quit, don't expect to be able to come back to me when you think you feel like it or when you want to. No, this
Yeah.
is developing yourself to act true to your word when you don't feel like it, when the circumstances aren't pulling for you and supportive of that approach. Who are you going to be in the face of it? And if you can develop yourself in those skills, then you come out on the other side knowing yourself as someone who can tackle all of that. You've done it before, you've got those references, and now you've got that muscle to manage yourself and your health for the rest of your life, and you can go die from something other than heart disease or cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I was thinking about it, probably, thinking ahead to our conversation today, this morning, just thinking, when you look at a longer span of time, because that's the thing, sometimes we just think about very short time frames, we're thinking ahead, the end of the year, or how many weeks and all of that. But when you then look back and go, okay, so I spent, 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, between the age of this and between the age of that, when you're looking back, but that completely transformed the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life. Like, really, if someone was to say, well, if you could go back and spend, 3 months or 6 months doing this, and it was going to impact your life, would you do it? Of course you would. So, to kind of give up now, I mean, yeah, great. I fit into heaps of stuff now that I wasn't before. I feel great, awesome, no problem. But that's not the goal, right? And I just keep going, oh, well, I feel good now. So let's see how I'm going to feel in 4 weeks, in 6 weeks. Like, who knows? That's going into unknown territory, but it's exciting.
Yes.
And I think the other thing as well, Dean, that, which is great that you guys emphasize as well, is this idea of coming out the other end, and there's a life to lead, and it's not like you're on a strict diet for the rest of your life. It's just about understanding the mechanisms, and so that you can start engaging with, again, you can then go to, I mean, we're coming up to the festive season, right? And even now, like I've been to a couple of Christmas parties, and so there's all the usual temptations around you all the time. Like wherever you go, people are offering stuff, and but it's amazing to be able to kind of just go, no, I'm cool, thanks. Just a glass of water will be fine,
Yep.
or whatever. And and it's interesting, isn't it? Time passes, all things change. You sort of just wait, and half an hour later, you've forgotten that there was that food in front of you. Who cares? What difference does it make? It
Yes, that's
made a
right.
difference. So if you'd succumbed, if you'd sort of reached out and grabbed that piece of panettone or whatever, just to, satisfy you for that 30 seconds, but then that's it, game over. Nah,
Of
nah.
course, you said panettone.
Of course, mate. I was offered it yesterday, like panettone. No, I can't. I can't. Limoncello. You can have some limoncello. No, I can't have limoncello. You're not going to stay for dinner. No, I'm going to stay for dinner. Thank you. In a couple of
Yeah.
months' time, I'll come back. I'll have first, seconds, and thirds. No worries. But for now, thank you. All good. So be able to say that, be able to do that, and feel good about it. And it's interesting. We had a big family dinner not long ago, and it was a lot of my favorite foods. And Mum went all out, and it was a birthday thing. There was food everywhere. It was fantastic, right? And I had my steamed veggies and my grilled chicken, and everyone had 4 courses of everything. And we come to the end, and everyone's sort of in a food coma, and they're looking at me and they're going, "You're the only one that feels good right now, aren't you?" Oh yeah, I feel amazing. How you guys are like, oh, I can't move. Ah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought, I've been there, and I'd actually much rather where I'm at, actually feel good.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is a lesson for everyone, especially as you say at this time of the year. And there's a resistance to saying no and standing for what's going to work for you, what you've actually given your word to, what honors the commitment that you're in. And to be able to say no, especially in that environment, it doesn't take as much as what people think. And if someone has been expressing their love to you your whole life via food, it's okay to say no, and I love you too.
Mhm.
It really is okay to say no to that offering and still be in the presence of each other's love for one another. And it's not about you being better than everyone else at the dinner table or anything like that. It's just the developing the ability to stand true to what you said you would do in the face of any or all circumstances. And if you can do that whilst you're in the coaching structure, you're more likely to succeed with the fulfillment of your commitments for the rest of your life when you're not in a coaching structure. So they're the opportunities to really challenge yourself and stand true to what you've promised your coach. And then what happens, it's not just that you feel better immediately after the meal. You wake up the next day proud of yourself.
Yeah, you do, and you kind of feel like you can just, you're the one that has the say. You have that control. You're right. You do feel good about yourself, and how you are in those circumstances. Then is how you are in other circumstances. That's in one area of your life, and it impacts other areas of your life as well. So it's a good thing to learn. It's a good thing to practice, and it is a practice, right? And sometimes and it gets easier, right? So just to say, for people who are thinking about embarking on this journey or early on this journey and so on, you go through different thoughts and feelings, and as you're getting used to it, the first few days are a bit strange, like it's good, it's fine. You notice you get to dinner and the protein and the things. and it's quite filling. It's like, oh, okay, I thought I was actually going to be hungry, but this is a good meal, you know. So there's all of that that goes on, and then, you know, after a while, you just get into a kind of a routine, and you just find ways of making it interesting. You know, you sort of just vary your proteins and stuff, and you know, there's different. I'll tell you about the afternoon snack with the protein bar and my coffee is fantastic. I love it. It's such a treat. You know, it's just little bits of enjoyment that you get out of it. You know, and you know, and it's about taking. It's about understanding. You know, I think that's the other thing. It's about those triggers. So you know, you spoke early on about the adaptability, right? Making our bodies adaptable. And that's a really interesting part to me. I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit more, right? Like what happens after that first phase as you go into, you know, the subsequent phases. You know, what does that look like when we start reintroducing other foods into our diet? How does what we're doing now set us up for success later, Dean?
Yeah, so the adaptive response is the key.
Right.
So there's enough flexibility in your biological systems for your body to adapt, depending on what kind of challenge it's placed within. So you need the challenge, and the challenge is, you know, the sort of restricting total calorie intake, restricting carbohydrates, managing the adequate intake of protein throughout the day, ensuring that there's a sufficient volume of food, right?
Yeah.
You need the volume to stretch the gut a couple of times a day, and there's an adequate, you know, volume of food in this protocol. And then
Yeah.
it's got to be nutritionally complete, and managing the integrity of everything that your coach says with the micronutrients. And you know, as you progress after about 6 to 8 weeks, it gets more and more personalized, dependent on your commitments and your performance in life. So you've got to create a sufficient environmental challenge and keep yourself in that challenge for long enough that your body will adapt. Okay, so what the adaptation means, there's 4 key areas of adaptation. One is metabolically. So substrate partitioning is altered, the way in which your body uses different fuels, the energy generation efficiency, hormones, hormonal profiles change, body composition, you have to manage that. So we're just reducing fat, we're not catabolizing your muscle, for example. So metabolic adaptations. And then there's, I mentioned earlier, in terms of not being hungry or craving foods, there's the ketones and the protein and the volume of food, but there's also a reconstitution of your gut microbiome.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got little bugs in your gut that are like, feed me. And they're communicating to your brain and basically causing your behavior. You know, this is a well-documented phenomena where parasites and internal flora can influence the nervous system of different organisms and alter their behavior. So when the gut microbiome reconstitutes and, you know, that changes, so do your mental processes, your behaviors, you feel calmer, you just speak more clearly, you make decisions faster, and you're less likely to crave certain foods, especially the carbohydrate-rich foods and sugars and so forth.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also, as I mentioned, that gut to brain connection. There's a rewiring of your brain. So the rest of your body will adapt to running on ketones, but there are 3 tissues that still require some glucose, but not much. Your brain is one of them. So is your red blood cells and your adrenal medulla. But your brain in particular, it still requires a little bit of glucose. Your liver will produce that glucose in just the right amount that your brain needs, right? No more. So that's the beauty of that process. And you don't need to eat carbohydrates. There's no such thing as an essential carb, right? But your brain starts to rewire. Your relationship to food alters. You start inquiring into why do I like this? And how do I eat in this situation? And do I eat in response to something like a stress or a heartache, or, you know, there's just, and what kind of foods? So you start examining this sort of stuff. And once it's examined, then you can be responsible for it. And then there's also an immune adaptation. So the reduction in brain fog, for example, the reduction in joint pain, this is all a reduction in inflammation. And if you're reducing your visceral fat, you talked about that earlier. So the visceral fat is the fat in your internal organs, and it's a little bit different to the fat that's under your skin. We call that subcutaneous fat. So the most dangerous fat is that in our internal organs, and you get fatty liver, you get fat in your pancreas, fat around your heart. This all causes an infiltration of immune cells called macrophages, and then they get trapped. There's an increased number of macrophages in that visceral fat, and it increases inflammation. Now, if you've got this low-grade chronic inflammation in your body, then your body always thinks that there's some kind of infection, right? And your brain will start putting down protective mechanisms like protein accumulation, tau protein, beta amyloid. This is all to protect it from an infection. You do not want an infection in your brain. Yeah. Now, if you're eating like crap and you're got all this visceral fat in your belly and you've got this low-grade chronic inflammation, well, your brain starts to deteriorate because of that protein accumulation. So does your cartilage in your joints. And also, I was reading a paper recently, and it's a theory. It's a theory that perhaps there is some utility even to cancer cells. That the transition from a specialized cell to a cancer cell is in response to perhaps low-grade chronic inflammation. And then the cancer cell, it transitions into a cancer cell that may secrete some anti-inflammatory or antimicrobial properties, right? Again, in theory, but it points to the dangers long-term of maintaining this low-grade chronic inflammation. So once you're metabolically healthy, so we've restored your normal biochemical processes, you've got a great muscle to fat ratio, inflammation is minimized, your body knows how to preferentially burn fat. More than that, you have an understanding. I mean, you're going to develop a really great understanding of nutritional biochemistry throughout this process, right? And you need that because the more you learn about these distinctions about nutritional biochemistry and how it impacts your physiology, the more powerful you'll be in managing this skin bag long term. And we'll start to reintroduce certain foods. So we'll up the calorie intake in a stepwise approach, not so much to shock it, because over this process, your body becomes more and more efficient at generating the energy that you need to get through your day and then some at a very low caloric intake. And so we'll step it up and we'll start to reintroduce carbohydrates and fat in a very controlled way so as to not shock the heck out of your pancreas and train your peripheral tissue, your skeletal muscle, your liver, your fat tissue to respond to the insulin that the pancreas secretes appropriately to that amount, okay? And then during the stabilization process, you'll learn, there's a bit of experimentation, you'll learn how to stabilize and balance yourself when you're exercising and you've got some freedom of choice. You'll also learn the discipline, the strength and power required to manage yourself when you have freedom of choice. And can you have an indulgence, like with your family, for example, be that person on the couch that's stuffed, but you're not worried because you know how to correct it the next day and be responsible for that. And you've got the discipline to immediately correct. And then you'll also develop an insight into what it's going to take to have the longevity and endurance of this kind of management long term. So there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And one of the greatest outcomes that we accomplish with our clients is not just the biometric results that your doctor would be interested in, and not just the results in your presentation, like you look better, and not just the results in your participation and your vitality, but also in your peace of mind. and not be so worried and concerned about the aging process, and that
Yeah.
whatever ailments, whatever issues might be happening in your body as we age, you've got some say in that. You know how to manage yourself, at least with the foundation of nutrition. You have some understanding of what to speak to when you visit your healthcare practitioners. And Simpler Health always makes ourselves available as an environment in which people can work things out, even from a concierge approach.
Yeah.
There are some people that come to me wanting more advanced treatments for, some non-severe degenerative disorders like osteoarthritis. They might want some stem cells to treat their joint and improve mobility and delay the requirement of replacement surgery, or even those who are suffering with more severe disease like cancer.
Yeah.
We have some treatment options that are available. In Japan, so people wondering what I've been doing this year. I've been flying all over the world, and I've been
Yeah.
working with some top places in Japan to make cancer treatment options available. And we're also developing a regenerative healthcare facility in Bali, where Australians can travel to as well, once we've got that set up, and they'll be able to receive immune cell therapy for cancer treatment, as well as stem cell therapies for degenerative diseases. So that
Yeah.
sort of stuff it's not so easy to do here in Australia.
Yeah.
And the Indonesian government's made it possible for me to set up a world first facility within Sanua in Bali. So that's very, very exciting. And I'm hoping to start development on that early in the new year, and have that ready for patient treatment some point in 2025.
Wow, that is amazing. And as someone with a history of knee injuries, that particular aspect, the regenerative stuff, the stem cells, I'll be talking to you about as well. And super exciting what you're doing in Japan as well. That's absolutely amazing, extraordinary.
I love traveling to Japan. It's
Yeah.
awesome. And I got to tell you, I love learning about the Japanese commitment to health. I mean,
Yeah.
they have what's called Metabo law,
Uh-huh.
where essentially the employer is responsible for managing the average waist circumference of the employees. And so Japan's got an obesity prevalence of less than 4%,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Compared to Australia, it's like 35%, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Obesity, double that for those that are at least overweight. But it's harsh, but in that cultural structure of Japan, it seems to work,
Yeah.
and that made cell therapies more readily available and accessible for patients after phase 2A clinical trials. So long as there's enough safety data, they made that shift in their regulatory structures back in 2014. So
Wow.
yeah, they're far more advanced than anywhere else in the world, and it's a real thrill for me to be able to partner some of the top players there in Japan and bring their offerings to the world. But the key is manage your metabolic health before all the tissue degrades and disease starts. So for those of you who are wanting to jump on board, you've listened this far in this Chewing the Fat episode, please be in touch, get started as soon as possible. And, we look forward to making a difference to you and those that you love. And Nino, just really appreciate your time and the generosity of your sharing, and love being able to contribute to you. And I look forward to doing another Chewing the Fat with you, perhaps in a year's time after you've met your goals, transitioned out. We'll see what's happened with your health and vitality. And given your background in coaching, we would love to be able to work with you in some way, shape, or form moving forward as well.
Dean, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, thank you for your commitment. I mean, like I said, I've been following your work and what you do, and your commitment to health, and to empower people to overcome their health issues, and to take some kind of power and responsibility for their well-being is inspiring. And what you've done with Simpler Health is amazing. I'm loving working with Trevor. Really enjoyed catching up with you today. I was really hoping to get a chance to catch up with you at some point. I know that you're always jetting around, so it's hard to kind of pin you down. So I'm thankful for the opportunity today. I would say to anyone out there, watching, listening, particularly if you know anyone who's going through the program, don't be afraid to approach them and have a chat. I've been talking to people about it, and a lot of people are very kind of interested, curious, as people are, and I think it'd make a big difference. And yeah, mate, I'd love to catch up with you again down the track and continue the journey with Simpler Health on many fronts. So thanks, Dean, and all the best to you and the team over the new year.
Wonderful. You too. Our pleasure. Thanks, Nino.
Thanks, mate. See ya.